Right, morning, morning. Welcome, everybody. We are talking about thinking today. So, yeah, the thing that came to mind was, sometimes he sits and thinks, and sometimes he just sits. So I'm not too sure where you fall in the greater scheme of things, but I think that's what we're about to find out today. So, yeah, Lee, the thinkers. Are we the thinkers, or are we the sitters?
What a cute pic. Thanks, Ivan. So, in thinking about today, I was thinking about my thinking and just what is it I think about. So I just sort of did like a review of my thinking in the course of a day, and just realized that you do a lot of thinking about many different things. And so there's the thinking of planning your day, the thinking of focus and concentration, and then changing gear when you're going from one thing to the next, and then focusing and concentrating in something else. There's the thinking about what am I going to cook for supper. There's the thinking about how do I talking to somebody, listening to them, and then answering a question. What is it that I need to say in response to what this person is asking? And then the thinking about other people and reaching out and connecting with family and making sure that those relationships are kind of connected and being I don't want to say managed, but that you're actually building that relationship in an ongoing way. And in the midst of that, I was thinking, what about the thinking that changes your thinking? Are these this is just normal life? So what is it that actually challenges my thinking and makes me look at how do I think differently? And I know in the early days of my marriage, and I say early days, I always say I'm a slow learner. It took me a long time to realize, how much I was doing wrong. And so one of the things that I got frustrated at was that my husband didn't think like me. And he insisted in thinking differently and like himself. And that was very annoying until I realized that his way of thinking was incredibly helpful because he didn't think like me. And if there were two of us that thought like me, one of us would be redundant. And so it was very helpful to realize that differing thinking was complementary and helpful. And then also so when I realize now when I get confronted with a comment or a perspective that sort of I immediately want to resist and say, no, that's not true, or that's not the way you do it. I have to step back and say, okay, is that true? Could I do it differently? Is that helpful? And so I think, so the bottom line, I think for me is if I am going to think differently and if I am going to challenge my perspective, it's about asking questions. And I think, and just to maybe just wrap up to say that for me, thinking differently is important because it is my way of keeping wanting to learn, wanting to make sure I'm not stuck in my own perspective and not getting a broader view of the world. But that again, I realize that's my bias. That's where I come from. And that other people are comfortable thinking their own thoughts and being protected by that thinking. My mom, for instance, and it might be in a different context, but if we ask her, what would you like for supper, or where would you like to go, or, what do you feel like doing now? Her standard answer is, I don't mind, you know, whatever you want to do. And the sense of, for her, that's been easy. I'm easy. That's what she'll say. I'm easy. I go with the flow. But what that mean, what the consequence is that I have to make the decision. I have to think. I have to do. I have to decide. And I just do that, whether she likes it or not. So yeah, so I think that's me just maybe entering into a little bit of the conversation and hopefully triggered some ideas, but I'm sure you've done your own thinking about your thinking, so we'd love to hear it.
Great, thanks, Lee. Yeah, so lots to think about. I thought you were going down the route there where, you know, you were really frustrated with these independent-minded men who had to think for themselves, and you just wanted them to fall in line. But I'm glad you changed direction. I was getting a little concerned that we might be in trouble here. So we better go across to some of the men to kick off with. So Ed, I think it's over to you first. Sorry, before I give that, I just want to say welcome to Chase. Yeah, first time on with us this morning, and great to have you here. And welcome back to Stella. Your ears must have been burning just before 8 o'clock because we were talking about you, wondering where you'd been, and good to see Nazipa back online as well. So yeah, welcome back to everybody. And so Ed, over to you.
I had your hair done because it looks different.
Sorry, Ed, your sound is breaking.
My internet.
I'm afraid you're breaking up quite badly.
My internet is a bit
yeah, unfortunately, that's you know, we're not hearing you at all. It's definitely some challenges there on your internet. But if you can hear us, that's great. Maybe if you get a gap, just try and restart or something like that and reconnect. So that's put a spanner in the works to kick the morning off. But anyway, not too serious. So Mpumelelo, let's get to you.
Yeah, good morning to everyone. To Chase as well, welcome to you. It's actually an interesting one to think about your thoughts. There's a lot one can cover in this. So again, I'll try to keep it to certain points. I think the first one that came to my mind was, as a man thinks, so he becomes. To say, you know, how you think about things eventually translates into how you will then act, how you will then view the world, how you will then interact with the world or see anything in the world. So I also then started to think, what are the things that influence how we think about things? You know, and I thought about upbringing has a lot to do with that, possibly, in influencing how we process information or think about things. What we watch, what we see, who we are surrounded by, all those are elements that at some point create thinking patterns. And so for me, it probably is very, very, very important, let me talk for myself, to be aware of what influences my thinking. And that influence, does it translate into better living? Does it translate into better understanding? I always, most of the time, deduce things down to what the final impact is in terms of, if I think in a particular pattern, do I become a better person? Do I become a better father? Do I become a better husband? Do I become a better person in relation to other people? Which is probably linked to what I spoke about yesterday. But interestingly, yes, it is important to think and see how one processes or thinks about things, because that will influence how you feel about them and then how you will then act. So yeah, I do sometimes try and see if my thoughts are correct and if they're right. And again, like I said, correct for me is measured in terms of how then do I behave. Changing of thoughts, I think changing of thoughts is like it's like any other physical exercise. Initially, when you start out, the body is sore, but eventually it gets used to certain weights, and eventually you have to change the size of weights and get bigger ones. And I think the changing of thoughts is also an exercise in that it takes time and it's a process. For me, it has to be deliberate. What that means is that I have to be conscious that the previous thoughts that I've been having are leading into a wrong feel mood about things. And therefore, I have to have a deliberate input continuously so that I get to a point where my mind naturally and instinctively starts to think in a new pattern or in a new way. That part is more about changing of thoughts. Let me keep it there.
Thanks, Mpumalelo. Definitely one of the thinkers on this panel. So lots of thoughts there and lots of input. So Una, let's come across to you next.
Yeah. Oh, you made me take out this book, Lee, that I bought a while back, which Good Thinking. I don't know if you guys know it, but I haven't read it yet. I've started a little bit this morning, and one of the things he says in there, which I loved, is that to really practice good thinking and logical thinking, you also need a lot of humbleness. So that made me think of your story with your husband, Lee, because I do think that we need to be very careful in our thinking, that we always also take a step back, and that's where they often speak about being the observer and watching your own thoughts, if you go more into that way of thinking, which is, I think, part of what we do need to do, is to sometimes take a step back from our thinking. But I think thinking is really important, but for many of us, we've forgotten also the heart and the body connection. So we live from this way up, and we don't bring the rest of us in. So it needs to be integrated, and we need to know that there's a place for thinking, and a place where that's important, but there's a place where we need to activate other areas of ourselves. We're not only brains and thinking brains. I've definitely, one of the things, if you study and you practice a profession, you learn to think in a very specific way. Like when I studied, I grew up with a dad that's a lawyer, and I studied law, and I realized at some point that my thinking was very limited in just thinking as a lawyer. So I had to go through a lot of reconditioning to start thinking in other ways. And I often now find that when I am with lawyers that typically think like lawyers, it just sometimes I'm battling we miss each other, because and that, I think that's good progress too, because I think many people just stay stuck in the same thinking. So I think go back to humbleness and take a step back. I also, with my husband, definitely, if I met him when I was much younger, we haven't met each other that long ago. We haven't been married that long. So if I met him when I was still young, we would definitely not have still been together, because sometimes we just think so differently. But that's the nice thing about maturity, is you realize, and it's actually scary to think how set I was on certain ideas, because he thinks so differently, how I've developed in my thoughts around that. So I think it's very healthy.
Great, thanks. You know, yeah, I always get worried when lawyers don't understand each other, but then maybe they never do. I'm not too sure, but we'll have to see. Let's get across to the creative accountant in the group. So that's you, Stella. So yeah, creative accountant who's moved from the accountancy to the heart. Eh? So yeah, follow up from Una's point on that one, I think.
Thanks for that nice introduction, Ivan. Morning, everyone. And yeah, I'm sorry I've missed a few days. I also missed you guys. Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. So as Ivan was saying, you know, coming from an accountant background and going into divorce mediation, it's like two different worlds. And I think specifically for me in my training, the divorce mediation training, they teach you a lot on your bias, because that has got such an influence on the way that you think, and then what you think becomes your words and your actions. And for me, I think as a mediator specifically, I think it's so important to be conscious of what you're thinking in that, specifically if you are in a mediation session. Coming from a divorce where there was infidelity, a mediator can be so influenced by her or him or hers bias towards maybe the one of the party that's been unfaithful. So I had to really think very, be very conscious of what I'm thinking, especially in mediation. And I try that with in my daily, actually since I left accounting, I've been thinking a lot more, and to make a conscious decision of to stop myself and to say, hey, what am I thinking now? Why am I reacting this way? Why am I feeling this way that I'm feeling? What is the why? Where's it coming from? Is it coming from a place of bias? Is it coming from a place of past experience? Is it coming from a place of my beliefs? You know, also just on beliefs as well, you know, your beliefs affect your thinking. And as a Christian, I'm going to be involved with people that's not Christians. And I must, you know, you can't have a bias against religion in your thinking when you deal with other people like that. So that's very important for me to really be conscious in why am I thinking the way that I'm thinking at the moment. And also just I've realized for myself as well that the way that I'm thinking, how it affects my my physical well-being. I've come to realize, you know, if you and I've been in those traps where you feel you think you're not good enough, or you think it's not going to work, and that actually translates into your actions and the way that your body actually reacts to what your thought patterns is. So that's me for today.
Great, thanks, Stella. There are some great points there, but now I'm really worried. We've got lawyers that don't understand each other, and we've got accountants who don't think. So, you know, we've really got some interesting challenges on this group. So, Jasper, can you sort that all out for us?
That's what they call a hospital pass in rugby, because I'm going to get hurt either way. But I was just thinking on the process of thinking, and Una said how she's now thinking different from how she was conditioned to think as a lawyer. And that's pretty much the world I'm in right now. And my own mind has been stretched by interaction with different people and new experiences. And once your mind has been stretched to a new possibility, it can't go back to accepting the old way of thinking. And, you know, that started in little spurts all throughout my exposure together with my wife in the network marketing industry. And then as I got into the gig thinking, and now I'm actually amazed to see how in a very short space of time, literally sometimes minutes, 10 minutes or more, once people's minds has been opened up to a new possibility of thinking of themselves as the founding parents of their dynasties, how all of a sudden their own perspective on their own problems change and shifts, and they're not out of their current predicaments, but they're now at least open to explore new possibilities. I also find myself that as I grow in this new way of thinking, I also become probably more rejectful of things that doesn't fit my new way of thinking. So I think even though your mind grow, you will always have a bias. You just change your bias and your filters. So what doesn't fit in immediately, you probably it's also a way of not wasting time. So if you know it's not going to move you forward, then rather cut the course right there. And then I think then a good advice that the Bible gives us, if I can just quickly go there and read it to you. It says in Philippians 4 verse 8 in the Amplified, for the rest, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is worthy of reverence and is honorable and seemly, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely and lovable, whatever is kind and winsome and gracious, if there's any virtue and excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think on and weigh and take account of these things, fix your mind on them. So without trying to make a sermon out of it, I think what it says is on a daily basis you are bombarded with things, images, news and whatever, and it can quickly get hold of your mind and take you on a journey that ends up and steals your joy and drain your energy, etc. So it's up to us to protect our minds, and in that verse is basically just the guide to say, whatever comes, if a thought comes up in your mind, test it against all these conditions. Does it fit it? Yes, carry on with that line of thinking. If it doesn't fit this line of thinking, reject it, because it's going to steal you and rob you of joy and energy. All right, that's my input.
Great, thank you, Domini. Always appreciate your insights and thoughts on those things. So yeah, interesting on that. So Ed, let's try you again, see if you're back able to talk to us from a non-warbling connection.
Am I back or back?
Unfortunately, Ed, no, it sounds like the undersea cable to the UK is soggy, I'm afraid. We're not hearing you at all well at the moment, which is a pity. So Trevor, Cardi, I think let's pop across to you. Ed, maybe just pop some comments into the chat box if you can, and we'll pick them up from there.
Ivan, I'm thinking. So,
is it a new experience for you, Trevor? Is it a new experience?
Well, I've got to tell you, between yesterday and today, I've given it quite a lot of thought, and I've got a bit of an acronym which I like to apply when I'm trying to think. And the acronym is TEAMS, and the T stands for truth and time, because the way I think is a function of what I believe to be my truth. And my 54 years of experience have allowed me to, over time, see things differently. So I always try and frame or reference what my thinking is in terms of truth and time. And then the E is based on a couple of things, my experiences. So what have I been through that I can have learned from? Because if you keep putting your hand in the boiling water, then you're not thinking so lekker. And then what have I been exposed to? Because those exposures also have been great learnings. And if you can take those learnings and apply them in your thinking, in your time going forward, well, that I find can also assist. But then the really tricky one is the emotion E. Because man, it can come and just throw everything out the door. It can be something that happens in the heat of a moment. It can be a stubbing of a toe. It can be someone cutting you off in the traffic. It can be just the way someone looks at you cockeyed over a boardroom table. So, that leads to the A in your thinking, which is what's your attitude? How are you going to approach this from an attitude perspective? And at the same time, what is the action that you're looking to get out of the thinking? What are you trying to achieve? So there are my A's. And then obviously the M is all about my own bias. It's all about me. So my family, my religion, my financial space, my physicality, and is it really me that I should be thinking about here? And then the S is really the solutions. What are the outcomes? What are we trying to achieve? And ultimately, so what? So I've been thinking, and so what? And yeah, so at the end of the day, if we're fortunate enough to have grace and mercy and you, we'll think again, and tomorrow we get another day to think. So I'll leave it at that.
Great, thanks, Joey. Yeah, nice acronym. I like that one. So, Chase, I think you've been nominated. You're on the spot now. You've got a bit of an idea of how things go here today, at least. You know, tomorrow could be completely different. So we'll just have to see what happens. But yeah, your thoughts on thinking.
Thank you, Ivan. All protocol observed. Good morning to all. So you see the tagline that I put in there is that the greatest spiritual exercise known to man is thinking. So I'll go back to what Impumelelo says, and I concur with him in saying that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. The way you perceive yourself is the way others will receive you. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that your thoughts have such impact upon your life. The way you think is where you are essentially heading to, if you know what I mean, you know. So as a man thinks in his heart, so is he, you know. With regards to thinking, you know, there's so much capacity in thinking. Yeah, you can go to the gym and gym your muscles. However, the greatest muscle you can gym is your mind. You know, they say that we only use 11% of our mind, which is ridiculous, because if we look at all these multi-billionaires in the world, I believe that they're using a bit more of their mind than what other people are using. They're able to tap into unseen fortes in their mind. So yeah, you know, growing your mind and thinking is the best thing one can do for themselves, essentially. And as well as when I go back to that book that was brought up, it said good thinking. So if your thoughts aren't good, so bad thinking will lead you to stink. So bad thinking makes you like bad stinking. So good thinking, you know, will essentially make you good. But if you think bad, you're going to stink. Yeah, I'll leave you guys with that one.
Fantastic. Chase, yeah, thinking never got good results, I don't think. Yes. Excellent. So, Cecile, are you with us? I saw you've been doing your normal multitasking this morning again. So, are you able to
Yes, I think I will just go with what Ed said. I do, therefore I live, seeing that I'm the doer. I don't overthink things. I think about practical things. I don't think about thinking. So I'm sorry, Chase, I'm fascinated that people have time to think about things. I just do. It sounds very shallow, but I'm positive. I'm a very positive person. So I only think positive thoughts. I always think the best of everything, the best of every situation, that it will always come out the best. And if it doesn't, then I just move on. And it always just fascinates me when I ask my husband something and he thinks completely differently, like you said, we try and think they should think like we think, and he thinks completely different. But then sometimes I just want to know, how did you think about how do you think about this? How come you're thinking so differently? Just try and explain your thinking. So yeah, but yeah, I do, therefore I live.
Don't we just know that from you, Cecile? Yeah, the absolute doer in the group. We're all continually amazed by that and your energy. So Donovan, definitely a man of thinking, but a man of few words. So Donovan, what are your thoughts?
Morning, everyone again. I hope you can hear me clearly. I was just thinking of that because we are creatures of habit, when it comes to our thinking, we tend to form patterns of thinking. So in order to break wrong or negative patterns, it's a very active process. You need to be intentional about changing and improving your thinking. So it's a continuous process. It's something that puts you on a path of continuous improvement, and it's a process that never stops. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Donovan. Yeah, good points there. And I see Ed put some comments into the chat box. So yeah, have a look at that. It's unfortunate we're not hearing him this morning, but at least we can read him. So Nazipa, let's get across to you next.
Hi, thank you, Ivan. This is an interesting topic because I am currently training my mind to think in a particular way. I find that I can be quite slow in thinking, and I've been doing exercises of how to train your mind to think faster. So this topic this morning is very interesting. I probably, like Lee's mom, have instances where I don't want to think, where I want somebody else to be responsible for that process, where and it's usually times where I'm overwhelmed and I'm thinking, why must I do everything? And there's times where I sit and think, no, let me take time out to go think. And you know, there's to be I think it was my first job where our boss used to tell us we're not paid to think, we're paid to do what he thinks. And you know, that occupied my mind a lot. And I find that when I think, I generally tend to think like a business person. You know, my daughter would always say to me, Mom, not everything is about business, like just think differently. But with that, I would also be very impatient with people that don't think in terms of business. Like, you know, I would be discussing something with someone and I'd want to discuss it in business terms, and somebody else is wanting to discuss it differently. And I've had to train myself that not everything is about business. I need to start thinking in separate ways. But what helps me in that is hanging out with people that are not business-minded people, because whilst in the past I used to be impatient about people that were not thinking what I was thinking, I've learned to appreciate their points of view. I think, you know, it's something that comes with age. Like now I can sit and listen to a totally different thought and actually appreciate some thought process and think, wow, I wouldn't have thought of that. Also in thinking, I think there's also dangers in there. I mean, I've seen people be totally destroyed by thoughts. I've seen people form thoughts out of nothing and, you know, grow those thoughts because that's what they keep thinking, to a point of destruction for themselves. So I'm very careful of the destructive nature of thought. And with that, I've also come to realize that thoughts have got a lot to do with perceptions. And so they're always going to be different, because my perceptions are going to be different from Pomelelo's perceptions. And, you know, we can both see the same thing, but because mine are going to be based on who I am, where I come from, and what experiences I've been through, I think that's the passage in which thoughts go through. It's, you know, your experiences, your perceptions, and everything else to that effect. But nice topic. I'm really grateful for this topic, because, you know, I've had to learn to be conscious of the stuff that goes through my head, simply because there's times where I catch myself thinking negative thoughts and I'm like, girl, no, why are you going down that route? So that's what I've learned to do with myself. And I find that it helps. Like, you know, I catch myself and I'm like, no, I'm not going to think that. That's it, I'm done. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Nazipa. Now I'm really worried I've got to stop thinking. So we've got to, so Trevor, has everything already been thunked, or is there more thinking to be done?
I disagree with everyone that has spoken here today. I really don't know what island you people are on, really. So I had to put a summary of my thoughts. Otherwise, my completely discombobulated mind, I'm still trying to look for that word in the Oxford English Dictionary, if you can find it for me, Ed. I just put some thoughts. For me, it's about just relaxing. It's about clear skies. It's going into the bush. You know, at this time now, I'm so happy that I retired when I was a youngster and just got out into the surf and spent a good 10 odd years in the surf, on the ocean. And then I got kicked up the butt by my wife. That interrupted my thinking time for a while. but she got used to it after 2 days and allowed me to go back into the surf for the remainder of my life. But there it is, clear skies, open plains, sandy beaches, blue oceans, desert island, free time. What the hell are you doing, Cecile? I was just this morning, you know, I've never let a load of bath water go down the drain. Every morning, I take a bucket, and it takes 8 to 10 buckets of water to actually take that bucket out and go spread it over the grass. And I was just thinking, about a fantastic meeting that I had yesterday with an individual, and he saw what my attitude was like when I bumped into a guy. I think he discovered some of my aggression there. He might mention it later on. But it was a fantastic meeting. All I'm going to say is find the free time, relax. Man, look for where the problems are. Treat them as challenges. And when Jasper was talking about possibilities, I mean, possibility thinking, just the unlimited possibilities. And the meeting that I had yesterday, I was sitting in a car with a book, and this blooming guy interrupted me. He was down the road. So I said, okay, listen, I've got a bit of free time. You're interrupting my book. Come along here. Let's go and have a draft. It was the most fantastic meeting I had for about 45 minutes. And then thank goodness I got rid of him and set him a challenge. And maybe he will talk about that particular meeting, but find the time. I was just thinking, what was I thinking? Oh yes, okay, it's about not thinking, not sweating the small stuff. The solutions will come. It is also about reducing everything to the most ridiculous. I saw someone make a comment, and I think it was Lee, that she suffers from overthinking. My particular skill gathered from my many years of trying to get out of matric is that my advantage is that I underthink. And Ivan will disagree with that. My view is if anything that you think has already been thunked 1,000 times over, and the internet actually proves that. You can go and research, you can put in any question you want, and some guy will come up with an answer, and it's generally not some guy, it's generally a woman that comes up with the proper answer. So I'll give you all us women, I'll give you credit for that. So reduce everything to the basics. 1, 2, 3. Complex problems must come down to the basics, and then solve the 1, 2, 3. Don't sweat the small stuff. And Chase, I agree with you. Every morning when you wake up, oof, I must go. It's all about your attitude. Stinking thinking is what kills most people, I believe. Oh, can I add one more thing? Sorry, Ivan, I'm stealing your time. It occurred to me that what you should be doing is asking Ace Magashula, what the hell are you thinking? That I want to find out what this guy thinks about corruption, ethics, and morality when it comes to being a member of the government, and any member of the government. And so I just want to listen in, and I added that in as listening. Is that enough from me?
Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, I'm not too sure what Cecile is showing us. She's fattening up a zebra for the braai behind her, but yeah, it's could
that
be,
was my weekend activities. Don't have to think; they come and eat from your hand.
and then you put them on the braai and eat from them. So.
No, luckily they're on the other side of the fence.
Oh, okay.
They don't taste good, man. Zebra, not good.
No, they might think I won't eat them.
Yeah, only eating it once, it's terrible.
All right. Okay, thanks, folks. I mean, fantastic topic this morning. I'm sure we could go on for hours on this one. It's a very interesting topic. Yeah, and different perspectives, different challenges. I think one of my challenges is I do sometimes overthink things. I'm the analytical type, so yeah, I've battled to get from here down, you know, as some people were saying when it comes to thinking. But it is an interesting challenge, and I think the key thing for me is, as has been said by a couple of people, is actually really guarding what external sources are trying to put in your mind, because that influences your thinking. And if you don't take those things captive and reject what, as Jasper said, doesn't work, and accept what does work, then you spiral down somebody else's rabbit hole, and you start thinking the way they want you to think rather than the way you need to think. So. I think that is really a key element for me, is element, I don't know, one of those things. So it's back to your dictionary, Trevor. I think we've got problems with words this morning. So, but I think we'll work it out eventually, Lee. So I think back to you to tell us what you're going to think about today for tomorrow.
Well, it just makes sense to pick up on Nazipo's comment where she was saying, well, let's talk about intelligences. To move from ways that we think into what are different types of intelligences. And so, poor old Trevor. So, and I think if we can think broader than just our individual intelligences, because I would like us to engage a little bit around what is individual and what is group as well. You know, where does intelligence lie? And the different levels and kinds of intelligence. And is there such a thing? Can we be intelligent? So I think there's lots to revolve around there. So yeah, let's be intelligent about our intelligences tomorrow.
And I've got nothing too intelligent to add to that, Lee. So all I can say is have a great day further. And folks, we will see you back at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning for another intelligent discussion. So go well, have a good one. Cheers.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a great